Hello, boys and girls. This is Miss Moreno. Welcome to Eureka Math, Module 3, Lesson 5. Today's lesson, we'll be looking at the opposite of a number's opposite. So let's look at the classwork. Locate the number -2 and its opposite on the number line below. So let's start by circling our integer, which is -2, and highlighting what it's asking us to do to locate it and find its opposite. So I know if I have a negative number, I go to the left like I did here. So -2 just means I need to move 2 spaces to the left, and that's how I land on -2. The second part says locate its opposite. So I know that the opposite of -2, if I went 2 spaces to the left to get -2, I need to go 2 spaces to the right, which puts me at +2. So I just finished locating -2 and its opposite on the number line. Now let's look at letter B. Write the integer that represents each of the following. So again, we're writing the integer, and just a reminder, the integer is the number. So let's look at the clues. 90 feet below sea level. So I'm working with the integer 90, and the word below tells me it's negative. So as an integer, I would write this as -90. Okay, let's look at number 2. 100 of depth. So if I have depth, I know that I owe. So that is negative. So as an integer, I would write this as -100. Number 3. 2 degrees Celsius above 0. I'm working with the integer 2, and the word above tells me it's positive. So as an integer, I would just write this as 2. Okay, on the next problem, we have a word problem. Joe is at the ice cream shop, and his house is 10 blocks north of the shop. So I'm already seeing the word north here. The park is 10 blocks south of the ice cream shop. So I'm going to stop for a moment. In yesterday's lesson, we were working with left and right because it was east and west. And today we're working with north and south. When he is at the ice cream shop, is Joe closer to the park or his house? And how could the number 0 be used in this situation? So let's take a look at the information we have. We know that his house is 10 blocks north of the shop, and the park is 10 blocks south. So I actually put this compass rose here so we can clearly see where north and south is. So I am going to draw a vertical number line just to match with the compass. So I'm going to start by labeling my number line. And what I see that they have in common is his house is 10 blocks north of the ice cream shop, and the park is 10 blocks south. So that tells me that 0 in this case represents the ice cream shop. So there I labeled my ice cream shop. Next, it says when he is at the ice cream shop, is Joe closer to the park or his house? So let's go ahead and label his house. Count all the way up to 10. And that is where his house is located. And the park is 10 blocks south, so I'm going to count 10 units down. And that's where the park is located. Now I need to answer, when he is at the ice cream shop, is Joe closer to the park or his house? So when I look here, I can see clearly that when Joe is at the ice cream shop, he is 10 spaces away from his house. So right here, he's exactly 10 spaces away. And when Joe is at the ice cream shop, he's exactly 10 spaces away, or blocks, I should say, from the park. So when Joe is at the ice cream shop, he is the same distance away from the park and his house. And the next question says, how could the number 0 be used in this situation? So 0 here is used to give us the location of the ice cream shop. Right now I'm going to do a quick review to prepare you for the next part of this lesson. So this is not on your workbook. This is just to prepare you. So I have the number 1. The opposite of 1 is -1, right? Now, if I want to write the opposite of -1, I have 1. So basically, I started with 1, and then I wrote the opposite of the opposite. So we started with 1, and then I have the opposite of the opposite. And in the learning target, if you notice, I skipped through it in the beginning because I know it sounds confusing, but see here you can clearly see that the opposite of the opposite of the original number, the opposite of the opposite is the original number. So my original number was 1, and I did the opposite of the opposite, and I have 1. Let's look at another integer. Here is 8. So if I write the opposite of 8, I get -8. And the opposite of -8 is 8. So if we look at this here, I have 8, and then I wrote the opposite of its opposite, and I ended up with the number I started with. So that's why the learning target says the opposite of the opposite is its original number. Let's take a look to see what that looks like on a number line. So what is the opposite of 8, and how can we illustrate it on a number line? So let's start by labeling our number line. I like to always find 0 first to find where the middle is. And since I need to label 8, my scale will go up by 1. And I know that when I label in the opposite direction, I need to follow the same scale. So let's take a look. What number is 8 units to the right of 0? So I'm going to count 8 units to the right. And I get 8. And how can I show, so now that I located 8, how can I illustrate locating the opposite of 8? So to find the opposite, I'm going to go 8 spaces in the opposite direction, and that puts me at -8. So now it says use the same process to locate the opposite of -8. So I'm going to use the same process, and the opposite of -8 would be 8. So with this information, I can conclude that the opposite of a number is the original number. Okay, so here, where it says person, I'm going to go ahead and add some names for you and the cards. I'm only going to do the first one for you because I want you to try the rest on your own. So I have, the first card is number 4. So I want to write the opposite of 4, which is -4. And another way to write -4 is with parentheses. It means the exact same thing. But now I want to write the opposite of that card. So here is the number I started with, the opposite of the opposite, which gives me the original number I started with. So I'm going to go ahead and stop. I want you to do all the work from here on, and I will be waiting for you to answer any questions.